You are no longer needed here.
You will regret this.
I stood at the entrance of the wedding venue wearing the tuxedo I'd spent literal months selecting and having tailored to absolute perfection. My heart was hammering against my ribs with excitement and nervous energy. The heat from the crowded room pressed against my skin, but it wasn't just the temperature making me sweat. Something felt wrong the moment I stepped inside. I'd been with my fiancée Sarah for 3 years, and we'd planned this day down to the smallest detail. Well, I'd planned it and paid for it. All $15,000 came directly from my bank account because Sarah wanted everything to be perfect, and her family kept promising to contribute, but somehow never actually came through with any money. Instead of seeing Sarah waiting for me at the altar surrounded by our friends and family, ready to start our lives together, I was immediately confronted by her mother, Linda. She was standing tall in the middle of the aisle, blocking my path, with this smile on her face that was sharp enough to cut through steel. The expression on her face wasn't welcoming or warm. It was predatory, victorious, like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. She looked directly at me and spoke words that I'll never forget for as long as I live. "You're no longer needed here. My son Jake will be taking your place as the groom today." I literally froze in place. My brain couldn't process the words she just said. They didn't make any logical sense. The murmuring in the hall grew louder as every single head turned to look at me. Eyes were shifting between me and this woman who had just dismissed me like I was an uninvited guest at my own wedding. Then Sarah stepped up beside her mother, and my heart sank even further. Her hair was perfectly curled, falling over one shoulder in those romantic waves she'd always wanted. Her makeup was absolutely pristine, and her dress, the expensive dress that I had personally paid for, was flowing around her like she was royalty in some twisted fairy tale. But there wasn't a single flicker of guilt on her face. No hesitation, no second thoughts, nothing but cold confidence. She actually looked at me and said that her brother, her alpha brother, as she kept calling him, would be taking my place. Not in some weird, incestuous way, but literally as a replacement groom because apparently he was more of a man than I could ever be. My mind went completely blank for several seconds. I had been with Sarah for years. I had planned this day down to every tiny detail. I had poured $15,000 of my hard-earned money into this wedding, making absolutely sure she had everything she had ever dreamed of, everything she had begged for. And now she was standing there telling me I had been replaced like I was a defective part in a machine. The whispers in the room transformed into a wave of judgment and shock. Some guests looked away, clearly uncomfortable with what they were witnessing. Others stared directly at me, waiting for me to explode, to fight back, to demand answers and explanations. Linda stepped forward, her smirk deepening into something truly cruel. She told me I had exactly 2 options available. I could either leave immediately and quietly, or I could take a seat in the audience and watch a real man marry her daughter. She emphasized those words, a real man, making sure everyone in the room heard the insult. The insult cut far deeper than I want to admit even now. The rage burning inside me was absolutely scorching, flowing through my veins like molten lava. I could feel my pulse pounding in my throat. The taste of humiliation was thick and bitter on my tongue. Every single muscle in my body was screaming for me to lash out, to unleash everything I was feeling, to make them regret this moment for the rest of their miserable lives. My fists were clenching at my sides so hard that my nails were digging into my palms. But then I did something that surprised even myself. I took one long, deep breath and forced myself to think clearly through the rage. Not yet, I told myself. This wasn't the time to explode. This wasn't the moment for confrontation. I looked Sarah directly in the eyes, searching desperately for anything, any tiny sign that she realized what she was doing, any flicker of hesitation or regret or second thoughts. But there was absolutely nothing there, just that smug satisfaction, the kind that comes from knowing you've won, from believing you've broken someone completely. She thought I was weak. She thought I was broken. She thought I would either make a scene or slink away in shame, so I did the last thing any of them expected me to do. I turned around calmly and walked straight out of that venue without saying a single word. The collective gasp from the guests echoed through the entire hall. Linda's smug expression faltered for just a brief moment, genuine surprise flickering across her face. Sarah's lips parted slightly, like she genuinely hadn't expected me to actually go through with leaving. She'd probably expected me to beg, to plead, to fight for my place. Good. Let them think they had won. let them revel in their so-called victory and enjoy their moment of triumph, because the game had only just begun and they had no idea what was coming. An hour later, I was sitting in my car, parked in a completely empty lot on the other side of town. The tuxedo jacket had been thrown carelessly onto the passenger seat. My tie was loosened and hanging around my neck. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so incredibly hard that my knuckles had turned completely white. I was shaking with a mixture of rage, humiliation, and adrenaline. My phone started buzzing on the seat beside me. At first, I ignored it completely. I wasn't ready to hear whatever pathetic excuse or twisted justification Sarah or her family had managed to cook up. But then, it rang again, and again, and again. By the fourth time, I finally picked it up and answered. The second I put the phone to my ear, I was immediately met with screaming. Sarah's voice came through the speaker, frantic and shrill, cutting through the silence of my car. "You ruined everything! Everything is falling apart! You have to come back!" I almost started laughing at the sheer audacity, the absolute nerve of this woman. I responded with eerie calmness, asking her how exactly I had ruined everything when she was the one who had replaced me at my own wedding. When she was the one who had let her mother throw me out like I was nothing, like I was garbage. There was stuttering breath on the other end, followed by more frantic yelling about how the wedding was a complete mess, how guests were leaving, how nothing was going according to plan. That's when the slow smirk formed on my face. I told her good and let the word hang in the air. She shrieked my name. "You don't understand what's happening. You need to fix this." I let my voice harden like steel. "No, Sarah, you don't understand, but don't worry, you will soon." Then, before she could say another word, before she could beg or threaten or manipulate, I hung up on her. As I sat there in my car, the weight of the entire situation settled over me like a heavy blanket. Sarah and her family genuinely thought they had crushed me, that I would simply disappear and lick my wounds while they carried on with their twisted version of a perfect day. They had absolutely no idea what was coming their way. They had no concept of who they were actually dealing with. I took another slow, deliberate breath. My mind was already spinning rapidly with the next steps, calculating every move like a chess game. This wasn't over, not by a long shot, not even close. They wanted to play dirty? They wanted to humiliate me and steal from me? Fine. I would burn everything they had built straight to the ground, and I would make sure they watched every second of it. Walking away from that venue wasn't an act of surrender or defeat. It was a strategic retreat. They thought they had won, that they had humiliated me beyond any possibility of recovery. They genuinely believed I was broken. They had no idea who they were dealing with or what I was capable of. I started making phone calls, and this is where my revenge truly began to take shape. First, I dialed the number of the venue manager. He answered after 2 rings, his voice cheerful and professional. "Everything going smoothly with the wedding?" I almost laughed at the irony of his question. "Actually, I need you to cancel everything immediately." There was a long silence on the other end. "Excuse me, sir? Shut it down," I said firmly. "The catering, the flowers, the music, the decorations, everything I personally paid for, all of it needs to stop right now. Gone immediately." He hesitated, clearly confused and uncomfortable. "Sir, the wedding is literally happening right now as we speak." "Not my wedding," I cut in sharply. "If they want to replace me, let's see how well they handle a wedding without my money funding it. Cancel everything." Another long pause, then a very careful question. "Should I process a refund of the original payment method?" I actually smirked at that. "No, absolutely no refunds. Just cancel it all. Do you understand?" As I hung up that call, I pictured the chaos that was about to unfold inside that venue. Sarah and her mother had stolen my wedding, thinking they could swap me out like a disposable piece of furniture, like I was nothing. Let's see how much they liked it when their dream wedding fell apart right before their eyes. But I wasn't done. Not even remotely close. I scrolled through my contacts and found the number for the catering service. The moment someone picked up, I got straight to the point without any pleasantries. "I need you to cancel the food order for the wedding immediately." A surprised voice answered, clearly stressed. "Sir, we're literally in the middle of delivery right now. Our trucks are pulling up to the venue." "Turn the trucks around," I said coldly. "No food is to be served at this event. Not a single plate." The manager hesitated, probably checking their records. "Are you absolutely sure about this, sir?" I could already imagine in vivid detail the guests sitting at their elegantly decorated tables, waiting patiently for the grand feast that would never arrive. Their confusion slowly turning to hunger, then to annoyance, then to anger. Very sure. Turn around now, and there will be no refund. Click. I hung up and immediately moved to the next call. Next came the decorations. I had gone absolutely all out to make sure the wedding looked exactly the way Sarah had envisioned it. Every single detail, from the elaborate floral arrangements to the expensive silk table runners to the custom centerpieces, had been meticulously chosen by her using my money. Nothing had been too expensive or too elaborate when she was spending my cash. I called the decorator. I need you to pull everything, remove all decorations immediately. A confused voice stammered on the other end. Sir, the wedding ceremony is currently in progress. I don't care what's happening, I interrupted. Pack it up, take it all down, and if they give you any trouble whatsoever, tell them to take it up with me directly. I could hear the uncertainty in their voice, but ultimately I was the client who had paid. They had to comply with my instructions. I barely had time to enjoy the mental image of Sarah standing in an increasingly empty wedding hall before I made my next strategic move. The DJ. This was going to be particularly satisfying because Sarah had spent weeks selecting the perfect playlist, agonizing over every single song. The moment he answered his phone, I gave him the same firm instruction. Cut the music immediately, pack up all your equipment, and leave the venue. He actually chuckled nervously, like this had to be some kind of prank. Is this some kind of joke, man? Not at all, I replied seriously. You're no longer needed. Pack up and go. I could hear the hesitation in his breathing, the wheels turning in his head as he tried to figure out what was happening. But money talks, and I was the one who had paid him in full up front. After a moment, he agreed. One by one, I systematically dismantled every single element of that wedding that I had personally built and funded. By the time I was done making calls, the entire elaborate event was nothing but an empty shell, a skeleton of what it was supposed to be. Now it was time to sit back, relax, and watch the complete collapse unfold. I walked into a nearby cafe, ordered a large coffee, and settled into a comfortable seat right by the window. My phone was absolutely exploding with incoming calls from Sarah and various members of her family buzzing constantly. I ignored every single one of them. I just sipped my coffee slowly and waited patiently for the updates I knew were coming. Minutes gradually turned into an hour. Then my phone buzzed with a text message from a friend who was still inside the venue. The update was absolutely beautiful. Dude, everything is falling apart. Food trucks left, decorations being removed, DJ packed up, guests are so confused and people are starting to leave. Sarah's mom is losing her mind. I took another slow, satisfying sip of my coffee and smiled. Then my phone rang again. Sarah. This time I decided to answer and hear the desperation in her voice. You have to fix this, she screamed the moment I picked up. Everything is falling apart. The guests are complaining. There's no food, no music, no decorations. Nothing is working. I responded calmly, almost casually. Sounds like a terrible wedding. Maybe you should ask your real man to handle it and fix everything. There was complete silence on the other end, a pause so long that for a moment I genuinely thought she had hung up the phone. Then she spoke again, her voice lower now, shifting from angry to pleading and desperate. Please, we can talk about this later. Just fix it right now, okay? Call the vendors back. Tell them there was a mistake. Tell them anything. We can still salvage this somehow. I actually chuckled out loud. Salvage it? Sarah, let me make this crystal clear for you. You threw me out of my own wedding. You expected me to sit quietly in the audience while you replaced me like I was a spare part, like I meant nothing. You thought I would just disappear while you celebrated your perfect day on my dime. But now, without me and my money, you have absolutely nothing. It wasn't my fault, she snapped, panic clearly slipping into her voice now. It was my mother. She convinced me it was the right thing to do. She said you weren't good enough. Oh, so you're just a puppet now? I leaned back in my comfortable cafe chair, twirling my spoon casually in my coffee cup. Poor Sarah, completely unable to think for herself. A grown adult woman letting mommy make all her important life decisions. That's not fair. I cut her off sharply. Let me ask you something important, Sarah. When your mother told you to replace me, did you hesitate even once? Did you fight for me at all? Did you tell her no, that you loved me? That we were supposed to get married? Complete silence, not a single word. I smirked with satisfaction. That's exactly what I thought. You didn't... I hung up before she could say another word, before she could try to manipulate me or make more excuses. Meanwhile, back at the venue, the chaos was only growing exponentially worse with each passing minute. Guests who had been expecting a luxurious feast were now sitting at empty tables with nothing, muttering among themselves in confusion and checking their phones constantly. Some of them tried to discreetly slip away without making a scene. Others weren't subtle at all, openly complaining as they gathered their things and headed for the exits. Linda was in complete meltdown mode, storming through the hall like a tornado, demanding answers from everyone, barking orders at staff members who had absolutely no idea what was happening or why everything was being canceled. Jake, the best man and supposed alpha brother who was meant to replace me, was pacing nervously near the altar, looking around like a man who had just realized he'd walked directly into a burning building and had no way out. Then the DJ shut off his equipment and walked out with all his gear. Then the floral team started actively pulling down the decorations they'd spent hours putting up. Then the catering company vehicles arrived, but not to serve food. They came to officially inform everyone that the order had been canceled and they were leaving. By the time Sarah fully realized how deep the damage actually went, she was standing alone in the middle of a half-empty hall, watching her perfect dream day crumbling into dust around her. And that's when the guests really started talking among themselves, and the rumors began spreading like wildfire through the venue. The whispers started small at first. Wait, didn't she have a different fiancé? Wasn't someone else supposed to be the groom today? Where is he? Then a few guests who had personally witnessed the exchange at the entrance earlier started telling everyone the truth. Her mother literally told him to leave, kicked him out right at the door, told him to join the audience if he wanted to watch someone else marry Sarah. What, are you being serious right now? Yeah, I saw the whole thing. It was brutal. Wait, so he was the one who paid for everything, this whole wedding? Oh my God, that's insane. Like wildfire, the rumors and truth spread throughout the remaining guests. People were genuinely shocked and outraged. And just when I thought things genuinely couldn't get any worse for them, I received a message from an old friend who was still at the wedding venue. Dude, you're not going to believe this. Police just showed up. They're talking to Sarah's mom. I laughed so hard I almost spilled my coffee all over the cafe table. Apparently, guests who had personally seen me get kicked out had started telling the full story to others, and before long, the entire hall was buzzing with the real narrative of what had actually happened. The more people talked and shared information, the worse everything got for Sarah's family. Some guests were absolutely furious about what they had done to me, while others found the entire situation darkly hilarious in its karmic justice. But then one guest, someone who had known me personally for years, decided to bring up something else that made everything even worse. You know, I heard that guy paid for literally everything. The venue, the food, the decorations, all of it came from his bank account? No way. Are you serious? Everything? Dead serious. Sarah's family didn't spend a single dime. He funded the entire wedding by himself. Wait, so you're telling me she kicked him out, replaced him with her brother, and expected to keep all his money? That revelation was the moment when everything truly shifted. The remaining guests were now genuinely disgusted. People started leaving en masse. One by one, guests began walking out of the venue entirely, absolutely refusing to take part in what they now saw as a complete farce that Sarah and her family had tried to pass off as a legitimate wedding. Some stopped specifically to confront Linda directly, calling her out loudly for the horrible stunt she had pulled. Others straight up laughed in Sarah's face as they walked past her. The humiliation was complete and total. And then someone had the brilliant idea to inform the police about potential financial fraud. Here's what had happened. While reviewing my finances earlier in preparation for the wedding, I had stumbled across several unauthorized transactions on my credit card. Charges I definitely hadn't made. Luxury spa treatments at expensive salons, designer shopping sprees at high-end stores, multiple expensive dinners at fancy restaurants, and the absolute worst part that made my blood boil, a substantial down payment on a brand new luxury car. I hadn't even had the time to officially report it to the police myself yet because I'd been so focused on wedding preparations. But thanks to the gossip spreading like wildfire through the venue, someone else had taken it upon themselves to tip off the authorities about potential credit card fraud happening in connection with this wedding. The moment the police heard about possible financial crimes at a wedding venue, they showed up to investigate. And now, Linda was stammering, panicked, and making a complete fool of herself in front of absolutely everyone, trying to explain away charges she couldn't possibly justify. "This is absolutely ridiculous," she hissed at the investigating officer. Do you have any idea who I am? Do you know what kind of connections my family has? The cop barely blinked, completely unimpressed by her attempted intimidation. Ma'am, we received a credible report of financial fraud involving a substantial sum of money. We need to ask you some questions. You can cooperate here, or we can continue this conversation at the station. I had driven back to the venue by this point and was leaning casually against my car in the parking lot, arms crossed, watching this entire beautiful disaster unfold in real time. That's when Sarah spotted me standing there, her expression twisted into something between pure desperation and absolute rage. She stormed over, the weight of her expensive dress dragging behind her on the ground like a symbol of her own downfall, leaving a trail in the dirt. "Tell them this is all a mistake," she snapped at me. "Tell them right now." I raised an eyebrow calmly. "Oh, you mean a mistake? You mean the fraudulent charges on my credit card? Or do you mean the fact that you replaced me at the altar and genuinely thought you'd get away with it?" "I didn't know anything about the credit card," she insisted desperately. "It was my mother. I had no idea she was doing that." "And you honestly expect me to believe that?" I tilted my head, studying her face. "Sarah, when exactly were you planning to tell me about the unauthorized charges? Before or after you let your real man brother move into the house I was paying for?" Her breath hitched audibly. "It wasn't supposed to be like this. None of this was supposed to happen." I chuckled, shaking my head slowly. "No, you're right about that. It wasn't supposed to be like this for you. You thought you'd get everything you wanted and more, that I would just disappear quietly into the night, but you severely underestimated me." The police officer turned to address me directly. "Sir, are you the primary cardholder for the account in question?" I nodded firmly. "Yes, I am. And I was actually planning to file an official fraud report myself. I have all the receipts, the bank statements, copies of every transaction, everything you'll need to verify the charges." Linda whirled around, absolutely furious now, her face red. "You little rat! You're deliberately trying to ruin us! This is revenge!" I smirked at her, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. "No, ma'am. You ruined yourselves with your own actions. I'm just making sure there are actual consequences." The officer gave a tight-lipped nod. "We'll need you to come down to the station later today to finalize your official report, sir." "Of course," I said smoothly and professionally. "I'm happy to help with the investigation in any way possible." Sarah looked like she was about to physically collapse right there in the parking lot. The wedding she'd dreamed about for years was completely ruined. Her mother was now under active police investigation for serious crimes. The guests had nearly all left in complete disgust. And the man who was supposed to take my place, her brother Jake, I glanced around the parking lot and realized he was nowhere to be found. He'd apparently abandoned ship entirely. As the police continued their questioning of Linda, Sarah just stood there in her expensive dress, staring at the complete wreckage of what was supposed to be her absolutely perfect day. She turned to look at me one final time, her eyes pleading. "Please," she whispered. I shook my head slowly. "This is exactly what you wanted, Sarah. This is what you chose. Now enjoy it." Then, without another word or backward glance, I got into my car and drove away from that parking lot, leaving them all behind to deal with the consequences of their own actions. The battle was over, but my war wasn't quite finished yet. There were still more consequences to come. Over the next several days, I worked closely with my lawyer. The police fraud department had officially flagged my case, and the bank confirmed nearly $20,000 in completely unauthorized charges under my name, all directly linked to Linda. My lawyer asked me the important question. Did I want to press formal charges? I didn't hesitate for even a second. Press the charges, all of them. My lawyer paused. "Are you absolutely certain? This will likely result in serious criminal prosecution." "Positive," I said firmly, my voice completely calm and resolved. She thought she could use me. She thought I was weak and wouldn't fight back. Let's show her exactly how wrong she was about that assumption. My lawyer let out a low chuckle of approval. Consider it done. But I also did something else that would have even more far-reaching consequences. I posted the entire story online with full documentation, every receipt, every bank statement, every piece of evidence. I explained being thrown out of my own wedding, being told to watch from the audience, discovering my future mother-in-law had been systematically stealing from me. The post included screenshots of everything. Within hours, it had exploded across social media. Thousands of shares, tens of thousands of comments. People were absolutely outraged on my behalf, calling Sarah and her family every name imaginable. Then guests who had actually attended the wedding started commenting, confirming every single detail of my story and adding their own observations. The story went genuinely viral, spreading far beyond anything I could have imagined. Local news outlets picked up the fraud case. National websites wrote articles about it. Sarah's family, who had always been obsessed with maintaining their public image and social status, were now the subject of international ridicule and scandal. People started digging into their past, uncovering old lawsuits they'd been involved in, questionable business dealings from years ago, complaints from former employees who'd worked for Sarah's father. Their entire carefully constructed reputation was being systematically torn apart in public view. The messages started pouring in from Sarah and her family, each one more desperate than the last. First from Sarah. "What the hell did you do? Take it down! Take it all down right now!" I ignored it completely. Then from Jake, her brother, who was supposed to replace me. "Bro, this is getting completely out of control. You need to take the post down immediately. This is destroying us." I laughed at his message and ignored it too. He thought he still had the right to tell me what to do. Then finally came a message from Sarah's father, much longer and more carefully worded. "I know things got out of hand, but this has gone too far. I understand you're angry and you have every right to be, but this is seriously damaging our family's reputation and business. If we can sit down and talk like adults, maybe we can work something out that benefits everyone." So now when it was his family's reputation and business on the line, he suddenly wanted to be reasonable and mature. I replied with exactly one sentence. "You should have thought about that before your wife stole from me." No response came back. The next morning, my lawyer called with an update. "They're trying to settle. Sarah's family has made an offer." I raised my eyebrows. "How much?" $50,000 if you agree to drop all criminal charges against Linda." I actually smirked. They'd stolen $20,000 from me, and now they were willing to pay more than double just to make this nightmare disappear. My lawyer explained that the investigation was uncovering even more problematic financial activity, and if this went to full criminal trial, Linda was legitimately looking at serious prison time. "Decline the offer," I said without hesitation. My lawyer paused. "Are you sure? We could potentially negotiate for even more money." "I'm not here to negotiate," I said firmly. "I'm here to watch them fall completely. This isn't about money anymore." A few days later, they increased the offer to $75,000. Again, I declined without a second thought. The police officially pressed charges. Linda was now facing criminal prosecution. Sarah's father desperately tried to distance himself from the scandal, claiming he knew nothing about his wife's activities, but the damage was absolutely done. Investors pulled out of his business deals, partners backed away. His company took a massive financial hit from which it would never recover. Sarah herself had become a complete social pariah. Her friends abandoned her entirely. Former colleagues wanted nothing to do with her. No one wanted to be associated with someone whose entire life had been publicly exposed as built on lies and theft. One evening, my doorbell rang. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. I opened the door to find Sarah standing there, and she looked completely destroyed. The dress was gone, replaced by casual clothes. Her hair was a mess. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "Please don't hang up or close the door," she said quietly. "I need to talk to you." I crossed my arms but didn't close the door. She took a shaky breath. "I lost everything. My father barely looks at me. My mom is being dragged through legal hell. I can't leave the house without people recognizing me and whispering. It's all gone." "That must be awful," I said flatly, without any sympathy in my voice. She started crying. "I deserve it, don't I?" I asked her the one question that mattered. "When your mother told me to leave my own wedding, did you hesitate even once? Did you defend me? Did you say no?" Her tears came harder, which told me everything. "I thought you'd be fine," she whispered. "I thought you'd move on." "You thought I'd disappear," I corrected her. "That I'd let you take everything from me with no consequences?" "I don't want to be alone," she said desperately. "You should have thought about that before you threw me away like garbage," I replied coldly. That was the last time I ever saw or spoke to Sarah. Over the following weeks, the complete destruction of her family continued. Linda was formally convicted of fraud and sentenced to actual prison time. Sarah's father's business collapsed entirely, buried under debt and lost clients. Sarah herself disappeared from public view, reportedly living with a distant relative in another state. Months passed. I received one final message from Sarah. I saw you the other day. You looked happy. I guess that means you're really over me. I don't know what I expected, but it hurts more than I thought it would. I wish I could take everything back. I just hope you find the happiness I was too blind to give you. I read it once, then deleted it without responding. That evening, I went out with friends for the first time in months. My mind wasn't on revenge or Sarah or any of it. I was just living again. Then a woman approached our table. Kind eyes, genuine smile, completely different energy from Sarah. She asked if she could join us. I smiled and said yes. Sarah hadn't ruined me. She'd set me free. I'd won against her family, and against the version of myself who might have accepted being treated as disposable. The wedding that should have been my beginning became the start of something infinitely better.